feel like. Good evening. Welcome. First event of Jack in the Green 2025. And when this is finished, don't forget to go to the angling club in the Old Town where we're drinking beer and singing songs and playing music until we get thrown out. Yay! And we're selling t-shirts. Anyway, I'm Keith. I'm chairman of Jack in the Green. And I must say that this is one of the most exciting things that I think we've had for a very long time. Folklore, folk custom, folk song, folk dance, folk culture. There's one word that goes underneath all of that, and that's folk. And folk is ordinary people. Ordinary people like us. Not the bosses, not the establishment, it's ordinary people. And ordinary people had their own songs, their own culture, their own dances, their own customs. And Jack in the Green is one of those customs. It was actually born out of the chimney sweeps of South London. You know, it's not some quaint little rural thing. And it was, in many ways, giving the finger to the authorities. They used to go out and get drunk because they weren't supposed to, and so on. And I think it's important that people understand that they have a folk culture, that we have a culture, and that different peoples in different parts of the world have a folk culture. And that if you understand your own culture, it keeps you rooted in who you are. And far from being something divisive, I think that's something that unites us as people around the world. And I go around the world looking at customs and enjoying them and joining in. And I think it's really important. So this is a really seminal moment for Jack in the Green as far as I'm concerned, because we're finally beginning to work with other cultures within the town. And I think that's important. And when I was looking through the research on Jack in the Green, and I was looking at various things that happens and are happening, one of the things that I discovered is that Jack in the Greens had, during colonial times, gone to Australia. And they were taken over there with the sweeps. And actually I was the first person to note that customs had actually jumped. That was a long time ago now. But at the same time I wasn't too surprised, because that was still a sort of white British culture. So I could see that happening. And then I came across this particular picture, and I thought, wow, just what is going on there? Now, there was a bloke called James Fraser in the 19th century who had this idea that customs around the world all came from similar roots. That his ideas have kind of been debunked since then. But still, this thing fascinated me. And I knew Lorna around the Old Town. And about 6 months ago, she came up to myself and Heather and said, "I just been to Jamaica, I've got something to show you." And it was this picture. And I went, "Oh wow, it's that picture. You don't know anything about it, do you?" I said, "I'm not sure, but I'm going to find out." And I said, "Well, when you found out, can you please come and tell us all?" Here we are. Thank you.
So much for, I mean, it's a hard act to follow, isn't it? So, stand up. You're tired. Get up anyway. Stand up. Yeah, so Claudine, Ted and myself went to Jamaica. Was it this year?
Last year.
Last year. And we have to say it's Ted that saw the image in the gallery. And you can sit down now, Claudine. Yeah, take your time. Yeah, so it was Ted that saw the image in the gallery, and then Claudine and I were like, Jack, what's it doing in Jamaica? And it started a whole thing, you know, and Claudine loves her research, and Steve, can you stand up? Steve, we've done work with him before, and his research, Tola, you need to get up as well. So these people that I knew that were researching the black links to Carnival, to Mass, and back to Jack in the Green. So everything that you see tonight, and it's going to be entertaining. And those that didn't get a ticket, they're going to be crying when they hear how much you enjoyed it. Everything is tied into this image. So we go out to the Caribbean, we go out to Africa, but it's all tied back to this image. So if we can have the next slide, Dean. We've had a lot of technical problems, so you're going to have to really bear with us today. So how many of you know of Cohen Braithwaite killed Cohen? How many of you? Hands up. Not many. Oh, okay, put your hands up. So what interests me is the black artists that are doing folk music, and I thought it would be nice to have them here tonight. So I reached out to Cohen and to Angelique Morrison as well, and they were like really up for it to come, but obviously they're folk singers, so this time of the year, yeah. So the next best thing was to have a video. So they've given permission for their video to be played, but before we play it, I asked them to write something as if they were going to be here. So just bear with me as I read this. Right, so this is Cohen. So it goes, first I'd like to say, I didn't write it, he wrote this. Okay? First I'd like to say a huge thanks to Lorna for inviting me to make this contribution, and to say that I'm greatly disappointed not to be able to join in person for this beautiful event celebrating Caribbean and British folk culture and the way in which they relate to one another. This is an idea that is very close to my heart. I am British born and have made much of my career exploring folk songs and customs of England. But both of my maternal grandparents were Ringmush generation migrants who moved from their home in Barbados to the UK in the 1960s. And because of this heritage, Caribbean culture played a huge part in my upbringing. For my latest album, Play Up the Music, I've been looking at the connection between Caribbean folk songs and black musical traditions of the Americas and the English folk song tradition. I would like to share with you the opening track of the album, which is a Jamaican folk song called Tacoma's Song, which is a Caribbean retelling of a classic English song, which is usually called The Keys of Canterbury. As you will hear, the song tells the same narrative as the usual English version of the songs, but infused with a bit of the island groove.
Make you have the present of a nice gold watch to wear it in the streets and let the people see. If you'll only be my true lover, if you'll only be my true lover. No, 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 not for all your gold watch. I will never be your true lover. I will never be your true lover. I will make you have the present of a nice gold chain to wear it in the streets and let the people see. If you'll only be my true lover, if you'll only be my true lover. No, 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 not for all your gold chain. I will never be your true lover. I will never be your true lover. I will make you have the present of a nice coach and six to ride about all day and let the people see. If you'll only be my true true lover, if you'll only be my true lover. No, 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 not your coach nor your six. I will never be your true lover. I will never be your true lover. I will make you have the present of houses and land to walk about all day and let the people see. If you'll only be my true lover, if you'll only be my true lover. No, 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 not your house nor your land. I will never be your true lover. I will never be your true lover. I will make you have the present of the key to my heart. Married we will be and never, never part. If you'll only be my true lover, if you'll only be my true lover. Yes, 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 for the key to your heart. I will always be your true lover. I will always be your true lover.
Oh, sorry. I can't do more than one thing at once. Right, so we're going to have our first speaker.
So you all know who I am now. And my talk is called A Stone in the River. Oh, right, okay. Actually, can everybody hear me?
No.
Okay. I really don't like microphones, I really don't. But anyway, is that better? Thank you. Yeah, okay. If I need to hold it up, go like that. Thank you. Hold it up. So my talk is called A Stone in the River, if you ever get there. And it's based on my research, which is looking at the retention of African and Caribbean culture, of African culture in Caribbean masquerade. So, next slide, please. Thank you very much. So, I started getting involved in carnival. These are supposed to go on a scroll, so these don't go in any particular order, but it's a good way to start. I started working in carnival in 2011 when I just wandered into this job. It was a part-time temporary job working as a project manager for an archive project. So, I know about archives, I'll go and do that. And it's at the UK Centre for Carnival Arts. And it changed my life. Because when I was working there, I realised that my interest, which I already had in intangible cultural heritage, it was just so evident that there was a living, breathing, oral culture, intangible cultural heritage going on all around me. So I just got completely fascinated by carnival. In fact, I went to a job interview once, and they asked me 6 questions, and I answered them all about carnival. Did not get that job. So I've been researching African traditions in British Caribbean Carnival ever since then, and then I actually formally did a doctorate in 2015, which took forever. So my work challenges some very basic misconceptions about African culture and about Caribbean culture that is in the mostly accepted canon of academic research and theory. So the first one is Africans and Caribbeans have no recorded culture. Yeah, absolutely. The next one is Africans and Caribbeans. Well, when Africans were enslaved, the Middle Passage was so traumatic, they lost all their culture, they lost all their knowledge, and when they arrived on the other side of the Atlantic, they're completely traumatized blank slates that just became whatever the plantocracy, the European plantocracy wanted. And that included that they lost their religion, they lost their language, and they lost their rituals as well. And the last thing, the last serious thing that I challenge in my work is the fact that Carnival is always looked at through a theory by this guy called Mikhail Bakhtin, who was a Russian theorist. And this leads to the theory of the Carnivalesque. And the Carnivalesque is that on Carnival Day, everything goes crazy, the world turns upside down, and that's what Carnival is about. Carnival's not about that, not for many people. And if we were to include Jack in the Green as a masquerading tradition, it's not about one day. It's about a whole lifetime. It's about a whole year. It's about a whole ritual that ties you into your place and into your world and into your family and into your culture. So I challenge those three things all the time in my research. So some examples of retained African culture are easier to spot than others. So for example, in religion, the Yoruba deities, or the Orisha, Osun, Shango, Isu, they thrived across the Caribbean, and it's not just in the cultures of the enslaved Yoruba people who were taken down across the entire Caribbean. They were very, very popular, and they still are now. Although in places like Brazil and in Cuba, they became what's now known as Santeria. Because it was illegal for the enslaved Africans to practice their own religion and culture, they then had to hide it. So certain Orishas became like Oya, she became the Virgin Mary. So they were practicing two religions at the same time, now it's called Santeria. So that's me, that's not me. Other examples are Moko or Moko Jombe, who are the stilt walkers who the tradition is that they walked across the ocean, this breaks my heart, walked across the ocean after the enslaved children. So they're spirit walkers in West Africa, Moko, and they mediate between this world and the next and the ancestors, because ancestor worship in Caribbean and in African culture is very, very important. And the Mokos followed enslaved children and became Moko Jombe, Moko ghost Mokos in Trinidad and across the Caribbean. And I can't, those of you who've heard me speak before, you're probably sick to death of hearing about Carriacou, but it's really important. There's a tiny island off of Grenada called Carriacou, where they've managed to preserve the dancing and drumming traditions that were brought by the enslaved Africans, and they still perform these. So they dance in a ring, and they dance in the order that the people who were enslaved there were taken there. So it begins with the Mandinga people, because they were the first people who were enslaved there. And all the other people then dance in the order. And they've actually managed to preserve these, and you can see the similarities and the exact sort of like dance movements still to this day. So there's lots of ways to actually challenge the fact that there's no retention of African culture in Caribbean Carnival. Other things are slightly harder to recognise and become much more creolised. So for example, in costumes, you saw that, like I had a mesh on my face, a visor. So visors, balls, backpacks, they're things that have become incorporated into carnival costumes, traditional masquerading costumes. But it's hard to see where the European started and where the African ended. But we can see examples of these things in African masquerading traditions. So, other things we can see are things like verbal language battles. So in Trinidad and in Carrick again, they're sort of like verbal competitions. So there's a character in Trinidad called the Midnight Robber, who wears a huge hat, and he meets another Midnight Robber, and then they have a big sort of like verbal battle, sort of like who can recite or who can create a poem that's better than the other one, and the one, so it's a bit like a rap battle really, exactly like a rap battle. And in Carrick there's a thing called Shakespeare Mass. So with Shakespeare Mass, you have to learn, or the people, the masqueraders learn a particular part of Julius Caesar, and then they meet another person who knows a different part of Julius Caesar, and again, we have another Shakespeare off, I suppose, really. So this is accompanied by whoever loses, and this is it also accompanies a lot of traditional masquerade. Whoever loses gets whipped or beaten. So it's in everybody's best interest to actually be as good as they possibly can. So finally,
yeah, I can take the microphone.
Finally, before my last example, I'm going to talk a little bit about John Canoe and Egungun, because we're going to see John Canoe a bit of it tonight, which is, I can't tell you how excited I am. And a very sad life, but it is great. Because you don't see John Canoe in the UK at all, so it's amazing what these incredible women have done. So John Canoe bears many, many similarities to a Yoruba masquerading tradition called Egungun. So in Egungun there are particular characters and particular costumes, and the characters do particular things, and some of them are very similar, again like the devil, like Pitch Patchy. They have different, they have the same costumes and the same function in John Canoe as they do in Egungun. So you can see again, so like the retention of African traditions in the Caribbean. So to conclude, you can see the retention of African cultural traditions in the Caribbean. But one thing I must say, obviously, and to be very, very clear about this, none of these traditions have survived completely intact. So there's no straight line from 17th century West African villages where the people were enslaved from to Notting Hill, but you can see echoes. And so that's why I call this bit, I'm finishing, that's why I call my talk a stone. Oh, the time's going on. That's why it's called a stone in a river, because you can drop a stone in a river and it changes over time, the water will change its shape, change its colour, but it's still the same stone. And as far as I'm concerned, the African and Caribbean cultural traditions that remain are the same thing. Thank you very much.
We are going to have a Q&A, I think. I'm getting tired. We're going to have a Q&A after this.
Okay, I've also got a mild allergy to microphones, but can everyone hear me?
No. If Toma has to have it, you have to have it.
Yeah, fair enough. Being a Democrat. So this is a subject really fascinates me. It was touched on by the first speaker, sorry, I forgot his name, Keith?
Yeah.
Keith, this evening, about the appearance of various folk figures, folk devils, folk heroes across the globe. You know, there's this crazy theory which has been debunked by James Fraser at the Golden Bough, saying that there is some sort of common progenitor to all of these things. That's been debunked and it's been replaced probably by aliens or something nowadays. That's how you see this common figure, very common in West African cultures, still today, mercifully, wonderfully, which has echoes and is very close to that of Jack in the Green in terms of the role that it plays and the functions as well of masquerades. I remember a couple of years ago when I first moved here, and I was wandering through the old town, and I saw for the first time Jack wandering around, and it's very familiar to me immediately. I did not know what it was, but it was very familiar to me immediately. The same conical design of the garb and covered in or foliage. Or I was familiar with the idea of the John Canoe figures and figures from Caribbean carnivals, which again have the same designs. And I was wondering what's going on here. But of course, instead of palm leaves and raffia, etc., you have British foliage. So my question was, is there some sort of similarity? What's this all about? I don't have any answers, but I have further questions. But what I want to look at is the power of all of these figures, or this one particular figure of Jack in the Green and African masquerade figures. And I want to look at the masquerade itself as well. Obviously the masquerade, it's worldwide. It's where there'll be this mishmash of performance arts, oration, dance, all kinds of music, but it locks cultures into the landscape. It keeps histories, such as the famous New Yam festivals celebrating the harvest, and a lot of connections to the earth, to peoples on their homeland, and just that whole worldview, which runs the risk of just vanishing. And they preserve oral histories, philosophies, and worldviews. This is something which is really important because on one hand, of course, these activities and the masquerades and people who are involved in it, works with Jack in the Green as well as global masquerades, they have the power they have revolutionary potential because they can challenge authority, they can be vehicles and vectors of resistance. But on the other, given they have traditionalist sentiments and there's a lot of wishful thinking around past, fantastic imaginations about past national and cultural states. Yeah, they can also be reactionary as well. Oh yeah. So a vehicle for cultural preservation. So obviously, in the terms of West African histories, you see examples of Western norms being engineered to replace local traditions. And I'll talk more about that in the following slides. But it's also the case that because so many of these masquerade characters and masqueraders, they represent, in almost in a literal sense, the embodiment of elders who have passed, or even divine entities, then they are of supreme importance. I've read in Achebe's Things Fall Apart, how the Igwugu, this sort of council of masquerading elders who are embodying these spirits, they get replaced by the local British imposed court system, and they just lose their power. They just dwindle, wither, and perish. So that battle was always going on. But next one, please. There was still that element of resistance at the core of all of these things. I should have said as well, but in terms of religion and religious resistance, there's some amazing stories, particularly in the mid to late 20th, early 21st century, of the masquerades resisting the imposition, the ongoing, can't find a better term than spiritual war, it's a ridiculous thing, but the war to retain traditional cultures. In 2015, in Ondo State, at an apostolic, Christ Apostolic Church, the pastor just took it upon himself to decide to cast out Satan and all his demons, whereupon a bunch of masqueraders just in full gear burst into the church and just beat everyone up. And similarly, in August of that year, it happened again in the same state at a different church. But there's a very long and vigorous tradition of that, militancy. It wasn't like just revolt into style. We're just putting a nice artistic face on this. No, like in 1950, at the I can forget the name of the church, the Faith. I'm going to completely forget the name of the church. I'll ask you later. But in 1950 to 1951, there was ongoing warfare between the Nkonko masqueraders and the church's name I forget. And it actually, things did go on for over a year. It came to blows. So it's a very serious history of opposition. But here you can see, in terms of political expression, masquerades were at the core of the Women's War 1929, which politically it was thousands of women who were protesting for the need to have non-elite women, basically women who weren't married to local leaders, to have the ability to sit on local councils and to hold some sway. So there are two enemies: one, the traditional leaders and those councils, and on the other hand as well, the British colonialists who just wanted to keep things as they were. Women actually hijacked the masquerade traditions and would go around in the masquerades and they'd be behaving like men. That was part of their whole mode of attack. This went on for a very, very long time. They were wearing the masks, they were wearing the outfits, and eventually they wore the both male parties down. Unfortunately, it ended up, December 1929, I think. We ended up with 55 of the women being shot by colonial troops who just took objection to, the apparent power of their dance. But we're talking about militancy here. And of course, characters in masquerade symbolize colonial officials or unjust chiefs, and that's something which goes on today as well. So when I say it goes on today, I mean, one of the great manifestations of that is the appearance of Bola Ahmed Tinubu masked. Tinubu is the president of Nigeria, also known as Thief Nubu. And there are masks of him are very popular in all of these ceremonies. And there are a lot of very politically active masquerade groups now. The Agaba masqueraders, who had origins during what we now call the Biafra War, the Civil War, 67 to 70. Very male, very masculine big-option group who were protesting to, basically they were environmental protesters against the depredations of the Shell Oil Company in Ogoniland and around near areas. And they are still very, very active, but they've transcended their Niger Delta origins. They are like a national masquerade group within Nigeria. So that's both a positive and a negative. I haven't got time to really go into it. But I was going to end on this image, just to show the permanence and the ongoing legacy of this, because this is an image from the Igbo Association of Dublin, who are themselves here celebrating the Yam Festival on the streets of Dublin.
Thank you, Ted.
That's
me. I've got issues.
I know.
No, I'm going to stay. I'm sorry about this, guys.
You know what you said? Sorry, looking. She always says that when she goes, I'm sorry, and then she goes to me, sorry looking, so I thought it was a good opportunity to do the same thing. Ready?
Hey, why are you still on your phone?
Copious notes.
Oh, she come all the way from
South East London.
London. I don't think she's had her shots though. So, this is an interactive event. I shall be, I shall make responses to any questions I may ask. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Can I get an amen?
Yes.
Now, today we're exploring some incredible images. This is only one of the many lithographs, or lithograph, depending on which part of the country you come from, that we stumbled across in the Jamaican National Gallery, and it was incredible. Now, these would have been printed in loads of numbers, and then they would have been hand-coloured by various employed staff at the time. And in fact, one of them sold, in fact several of them, but one particular image now sells in Christie's, was it 2020, for over £40,000. So it's not a little thing. Yeah? Now, the artist here is called Isaac Mendes Belisario, and we were really. This one's going to upset me. So, Belisario's work is like a snapshot of Jamaican culture. It's about rebellion and it's about survival. Bear with. Perhaps, much like my own motivation for creating Playing the Race card, it was about using art to spark a conversation around race. I'm sorry about this, but it's like I'm an artist, I cannot work under these conditions. It's just, and it's just, I'm really upset now. I'm lost. So maybe he was like practicing some kind of like empathy, you know what I mean, through his art. Maybe his own experiences, which I shall come to, of exclusions allowed him, to see the Red Set girls and the other characters, not just as caricatures, but as heroes, defiant, complex, and worthy of reclamation. We're just going to jump to it now. Now, you don't need to answer the next question. Okay? You don't need to answer. I'm going to answer that. Who was Belisario? He was a Jewish, Jamaican-born artist with a Portuguese name. He was from a wealthy Jewish family. It's worth mentioning that he was a landscape artist and he actually displayed at the Royal Academy. Even though his family was white and Jewish, he was often called black. That's what they call Jews in Jamaica, just to put them in their own place and make sure, that they didn't get too big about their boots. Sort of some double standards going on, and even though his family had money, they were still treated as outsiders. Does this sound familiar at all? Yeah. Anyway, so full disclosure, one of my great, maybe another great grandfather was an Ashkenazi Jew, so according to my mother, when slavery was done, Uncle Isaac catch a little black girl because he never did want to leave the island. And that's our family line. So there is a whole mix,
Subtitles.
What? Oh, sorry. you understand that? Yeah. Did anybody not understand that? See me afterwards. But to Dennis Morrison, it's ironic. Now, his father owned plantations, yes, enslaved people. This was about him being an artist. You know, had enslaved people, but he still documented black Jamaican culture, and some say, with a lot of respect, think of him as like a contradictory ally, maybe flawed, yeah, but his art matters. Like, you know, like maybe here in Hastings, where you see those postcards of working people that have been captured, the fishing families, the flower sellers, you know, the street sellers, our history. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Breaking down this little image that we've seen again and again, just so you know, the red set was only like, the set just means group, posse, gang. You know, they were reds, they were greens, they were blues. They were named after diamonds, and there might have been a diamond after gems, and they used to lyrically and dancically spar with the other sets to see which set was the best set. I don't know which was the best, but whichever set I'm in, that's gonna be best. They wore bright, flamboyant dresses. Were they stolen European clothes? No. They remixed African styles with English stuff. They used to wear things like headscarves and things under there, though I can't really see those under those hats. And the hats were very much like would have been worn by even field workers or field enslaved people, as documented in these. So you see, if you went back to the previous picture, you'll see those hats and then go back again. So they really... She's really working for her. Yeah, so they really just repurposed and did all that. Next, please. So if you check this image out, this is the queen of the set, and she is more splendiferous than any of the girls, any of the red or green or blue set. Notice the queen, she's holding a whip, yeah? It's decorated with bows. It's kind of like a shady critique of slave overseers, you know? Turning a tool of cruelty into art. What you don't see is that these women participated in John Canoe. It was a rebellious street festival where enslaved people mocked colonial elite through satirical dance, costumes, music, a bold act of resistance and celebration. Well, it's disguised as celebration. Think Brazilian capoeira, where, you know, they assumed they were dancing while practicing to kick the shit out of them. That was my inner voice. Sorry about that. Though the tradition survives today, in terms of John Canoe, it has faded. It's been pushed into the margins by respectability politics. Push-up lit people is what we call them, thinking it too unruly, much like authorities have suppressed working class expressions of dissent, from Margaret Thatcher's crackdown on May Day to the policing of Carnival's radical roots. I used to quite like maypole dancing when I was at school. You know, I finished primary school in 1970. So I'm no spring chicken, and we used to do maypole dancing, and we used to have competitions with other schools, and it was something that everybody did and joined in, and it was great. And that all went with Thatcher stealing the milk and deciding that we weren't going to do May Day no more. So, it's that in the towns during Christmas holidays, they have several robust fellows dressed as grotesque habits, bellowing out, "John Canoe! John Canoe!" Or so says Edward Long, who was a white geezer from 1775 who wrote and documented much of what was going on in the island. And a bit like Isaac Mendes Belisario, it's their lens that we've seen things through. Next, please. So then, the Bushman mystery. So this character here, don't come near me, I'll fight. So who's that person covered in palm leaves? No, so we call it Jack in the Bush, yeah? And we you know, because we don't have forests or things in Jamaica or the Caribbean, we just call them bush. But could Jack in the Bush be about freedom fighters? Like Nanny and Cujo, who led bold raids, challenged the colonizers on multiple fronts, and forced them into treaties securing liberty for enslaved Africans, who then founded the defiant community of Maroon Town that exists to this day. Yeah? One. Finally, you coming now. In a voice.
So I'll work with.
Seven. Next one, please. Right. Or could it be like Jack in the Green in the UK with the milkmaids? These are also Belisario's lithographs from his book that captured the people of Jamaica. Next one, please. Could it be? It is the last slide. With the milkmaids and chimney sweeps, you know, they'd be like dancing on the streets in London. I think Keith has mentioned that already. So there are very, very similarities to what was going on. Although I don't think that many Jamaican people in 1837 had chimneys. So in closing, I would say history isn't just about the powerful. It's about people who dance, who create, and who rebel. Look up Belisario's work. There's a free book, this book to download. It's what do they call it, open source now? So you can have a look at all the pictures, and we will be showing some of the characters from that book later.
But anyway, does anybody have any questions? We'd love to have some questions or comments. We've got.
Over here.
Right, let's take the mic over to you. Please take the most of this opportunity. This is a unique event. You might not have a question, but you might have a comment. We really want to hear from you. Say your name.
Hi there.
Where are you from?
Hello. I don't think it's working.
We can hear you.
Oh,
We can hear you.
my name is Yasmin. I'm from London.
Woo!
And my first time in Hastings, first time Jack and Green.
Very good.
Seeing the weekend of it because of this talk. Got really, really interested in folklore and how it relates to black people of colour. And my question was, we started the talk thinking about it's not just one day, it's a year-long sort of thing. And today, near my hotel, there was a little old lady giving out these parish news things, and I'm thinking about the costume makers, the people that decorate the streets. And I wondered if there was any examples you had of that kind of thing that's happening throughout the year. It's not just the day, we've seen the performances that happen, but is there anything about who makes the costumes? Is it a kind of a lineage that's passed down, you know, from families, etc.? Yeah. Thank you.
Let's start with Tola. Mike.
Oh, sorry. Are you talking about Jack in the Green or masquerading?
Masquerade and carnival, yeah.
Yeah, so in carnival, it's an oral culture. So the knowledge and the skills to make the costumes and actually process and what it means. So what it means to the people who are doing it is slightly different or very different to what the people who are actually just watching it. So what the values are and why people are doing it and why they fight like crazy to do it every year. This is all part of their oral culture. So there's a lot of knowledge that's passed down in that way from person to person within families and then within families and generations. So yes, and this is sort of like Carnival 2026 will start getting planned probably in October 2025 as soon as people have got over going on the road and being exhausted and everything. So yes, it is an all-round thing. And about this time of year, it's really gearing up ready for the summer.
Yeah, briefly, that question sort of reminds me, everything reminds me of a book, but it reminds me of Earl Lovelace's The Dragon Can't Dance, and the main character in there, Aldrich. He spent like a year just making this dragon costume, and the dragon just contains all the revolutionary fervour and all the revenge fantasies, and he's just putting this basically like a suit of armour together to wear at the carnival. And I'm not going to give you the plot, but it's a fantastic, probably the best book about the carnival and how it just not just takes over his life, but becomes an engine for The Dragon Can't Dance. Earl Lovelace. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just say that also, well, with reference to John Canoe is not carnival, and which is probably why it kind of is dying out in Jamaica, although it's massive in Bahamas. It's not carnival. It's because it is about the poorer people, the unruly. They don't know how to behave. They're not decent. It's that kind of thing. And even back in the day, it was interesting because in Jamaica at Christmas, the enslaved people had 3 days to do John Canoe in a time when in Britain it was hard to get a day off if you were working class. So it was interesting, and they dare not actually stop the revelry, because when they did try to stop it, some rich Mr. Fartface actually got killed. And there are diaries pointing to the fact that they were so scared of stopping John Canoe and stopping them for that 3 day. Imagine 3 whole days, it was a big thing.
Tola would say something.
Sorry. So in my preparation, all the things I forgot to say in my talk, one of the things I was going to do was talk about the difference between British Caribbean Carnival and Masquerade. So Caribbean Carnival takes place in that Lenten time that Claudia's talking about. And that mainly takes place on islands that were Catholic, so they were either French or Spanish colonies or Portuguese. Masquerade takes place usually in British or Dutch ex-colonies because they don't celebrate Lent. So therefore it takes place at other times like Christmas or crop over, when there's harvest and stuff like that. British Caribbean Carnival sort of like it marries the two together because there's no carnival in the UK since the Reformation. It's no longer a Catholic country, so it's not Lenten. But carnival, the word and the meaning of it was still retained. So when Caribbean Carnival came here, it's sort of like it's a wonderful mixture of everything. So I'll just,
Oh, I did, yeah, I did. Hi, I'm Paula. I'm from Tapestry of Black Britons, a literal tapestry that's been woven and will be displayed next week, hopefully coming to Hastings next year, Museum of Hastings. I find this research absolutely fascinating because using history to propel art is amazing. And when you were talking about Jack in the Bush and that link to the Maroons, I just wondered if there was more information you might have on that. I asked because I was doing some research at the British Library into Nanny for a script I was writing, and I just wondered if there was some information you might have about that.
We'll have to shoot you.
No, I wouldn't shoot you, Paula. She would. I think there's a lot of information about that. Jack in the Bush, or Jack in the Green, if you like, isn't really featured very much in John Canoe anymore. There are references to it, and there are also the odd paper on it. But Jack in the Green was used basically to hide in plain sight. And that's how they were able to pounce on the settlers, and and they absolutely terrified them. And there was so much slaughter on both sides, but that in the end they were forced to make a treaty. I mean, that's how that whole thing came about. But I think Keith may have alluded to it, that whole Bushman thing is in every country, it's in every continent, it's a thing of common folk. And, they take it to warfare, the whole thing about being camouflage. Yeah. And now they have other characters like the police. They have one they still call the Red Indian. They have one they call Belly Woman. Yeah, and the characters were usually played by men, but we turned it around, and most of our characters are played by women. Yeah.
Any other questions?
The Still Walkers. What's the Still Walkers connections?
Oh, the Still Walkers. The Mockos. Sorry,
Walkers, yeah.
the Mockos.
If you don't mind, sorry.
No, so in West African masquerading tradition, the stilt walkers are mediators between this world and the ancestor world, next world. And like I said, so the tradition sort of like was also transferred with the enslaved Africans. That's why I told that story about the Mockos walking across the water. And sort of like, so it's a very visible sort of like connection between West African and Caribbean masquerading. So, yeah.
Any more? There's one here. Three, that's good. Thank you. Let's go with mine. Oh, we're taking your mine.
Yeah,
Please take on
Did you pass the mic down and then pass it back to this young man there?
So in Jack in the Green, there's an element of the change of season from winter to summer, and the beckoning in of the hopefully wonderful weather. I've heard the weather in the Caribbean might be slightly different to what we have in Britain. Is there any element of that in the history of some of the festivals and what there is as well?
Well, I would say, we go from lardy hot to why, what a wicked hot. That's the transition.
There is some, maybe there's sort of answer to that in some of the yam festivals, which always take place at the end of the rainy season, early August. But to actually mark seasons in that particular way.
No, I'm the same actually, and I feel a bit confused because I've never actually really thought of it in that way, in sort of like Caribbean African masquerade, apart from sort of like, things like, to celebrate particular events. So I suppose crop over and Spice Mass, they celebrate sort of like harvest time, like the yam festivals, but not really the changing of seasons in the way that Jack and Green does. I will just bore everybody again about Carriacou, if I may, just for a second though, because one of the reasons that the traditions were able to survive so well on that island was because in the dry season, the enslaved Africans didn't do anything. So they didn't have to do anything because there's no work to do. So that allowed them the time to actually carry on and practice their traditions. Yeah, yeah.
Not talk about yourself.
I'm not sure how to put this. I'm Peter. I've come down from London today, I just think it's a brilliant start to Jack in the Green weekend. And I'm going to be looking at this procession on. I'll be in this procession on Monday. Actually, this year with a bunch of girls who are going to be the best dancers out there, so that's good. But they're. I'm going to be thinking, where's any of this energy? Is it there already unconsciously? Because you've given us a real picture of this power, this resistance, this politics, and everything else. And I'm sure Keith might maybe Keith's the person to ask this. Are we going to see anything of this kind of out there on the streets, either this year or in future, Jack in the Greens?
So, my opinion in terms of yeah. So I love intangible cultural heritage, all of it, around the whole world, and totally fascinated by it everywhere. And I don't know, I think this is a Hastings thing. I think Jack in the Green doesn't need other masquerading traditions. I think what we should concentrate on is preserving Jack in the Green and Hastings. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I'd sort of go along with that. Because, I mean, we're generationally in this room, we can see how the Notting Hill Carnival has culturally degenerated from the fundamental 5 disciplines or whatever, and have entertained sort of rap, acid house, and I've actually heard Led Zeppelin there once, and I saw the Steel Pan Band of the Royal Marines. I'm not joking. That's when I stopped going. I was like, the Dragon Can Dance. So I'm not sure that it is time for Black in the Green yet, but maybe if it happens organically and naturally.
I know that everybody's expecting us all to be parading in, jumping up and down, but it's like, I can't even run for the bus, so. And it's like we've also got 50,000 bikers. You can't even get a cab down there. So sadly, we are not going to be there, but everybody present here will, after the break, get a great glimpse of what we've been up to. What's been going down at the lab and at the museum.
I think Steve made an interesting point. It's a thing we want to preserve Jack in the Green, and we don't want to put John Canoe into Jack in the Green. They're separate things, and keep that energy. And if we do something else, it will just evolve. I'm coming to Keith last, but I'm going to go.
I was just wondering, you said the Jack in the Green comes from the chimney sweeps in London. I always picture Jack in the Green sort of like, the forest man, the protector of the forest thing. I couldn't really find any research to back it, but his very rural, plant-based. I just wondered, how did the chimney sweeps reach to Jack in the Green?
We'll go to Keith. You haven't got long.
Well, the answer to that question was that the various guilds in London, people had come into London from the countryside, and the various guilds had set up their own May Day festivities and were trying to outdo each other with the size of their garland, and the sweets made one so big they had to climb inside it.
Whoa, okay. And also, that May the 1st was actually designated Sweeps Day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Keith, did you have a question?
I did have a question. Yeah. I think Jack in the Green is strong enough to actually take John Canoe within itself. I'd be very pleased to see you one day when you feel ready. That's an aside. My question is that it's an observation really. There's a lot of parallels, and without going down that Fraser route, which I really try not to do. Jack in the Bush is also a name that has been given in some parts of this country. Jack simply is an old Victorian name for man, so it just means man in a bush or man in a tree or whatever. And I think there's a lot to be said about you started talking about the ancillary characters, and I think there's a lot to be looked at there, because Jack in the Green had a lot of that and has a lot of ancillary characters. And if there's parallels there, then we are not going down that Fraser rabbit hole. We are actually seeing that there's a jump. I mean, for example, there's a fat man with a drum. There's a clown. Yeah, and there's the Lord and Lady of the May who are basically taking the mick out of the aristocracy, dressed up in big fancy clothes. So there's quite a lot of that. And there's also a character we might discuss at some other time that we've now removed called Black Sal. Interesting Victorian point there.
Good time to take them. Right, let's give our three speakers another round. Another folk artist, as you can see there, and she wanted to be here as well. But what is really nice about Corinne and Angeline is that they've said if I want to do something next year, they will come in person. So that's really amazing. But we won't do it in May. We'll try and do it another time because they're so fully booked. So this is what she's written. I was delighted to be asked to participate in this wonderful event. As a direct descendant of an enslaved African ancestor, trafficked to the Caribbean and ended up in Britain, my heritage makes me part of a small but growing number of black and brown British folk and traditional musicians. My work seeks to honour the hidden, lost and forgotten ancestors of the African diaspora in Britain, present in our shared past but mostly written out of official histories. Part of this work involves exploring the connection between us all and the shared nature of so many folk songs, stories and traditions. You will hear a track from my 2022 album, The Sorrow Songs, Folk Songs of Black British Experience. For this album, I researched the real lives of Black ancestors in Britain, restoring them into what I hope sounds like, lost or forgotten British folk songs. The song you will hear, Unknown African Boy, dated 1830, tells the true story of an enslaved child who was drowned in a shipwreck off St. Martin's Isle, Sicily. The stunning animation was created by Mary Waterson, music video animator, singer and songwriter. So please enjoy. And Mary Anderson is a folk singer as well. I'm going to swap mics.
Oh, my brown arms, they are sad and empty. Oh, where is my little son? is stolen away by English slavers with a cudgel blow and a pointed gun. My riven heart, it is wide with sorrow. Oh, where is my darling boy? Thrust into a sack with babes and younglings by slavers in the king's employ. Luli, my dear babe, where'er you be, may the arms of the ocean be cradle for thee. Ripped, oh so cruel, from his loving mother, my darling babe, to be bought and sold, his skin rubbed raw by iron shackles, he gulps foul air in the ship's dank hold. Oh, I'll send my spirit out into the darkness, into stars and the wind and the sea I'll go. My spirit will fly into earth and water, that a mother's love he might then know. Luli, my dear babe, where'er you be, may the arms of the ocean be cradle for thee. If the sea be your bed and the waves be your pillow, may the sun in the sky keep you from all harm. The earth is your mother now, dear baby. She will hold you safe in her soft brown arms. Luli, my dear babe, where'er you be, may the arms of the ocean be cradle for thee. Oh, earth, cradle my son for me. Oh, earth, cradle my son for me.
My lords, ladies, gentlefolk and common folk, please be upstanding for the Queen of the Set.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and persons united tonight. I'm bringing to you the Red Set Girls and Jock in the Bush. Please be seated. Can you stay there, please? We're having what they call technical problems with the music. I'm an artist, can't work in these conditions.
Hastings, you never seen nothing so fine as Miss Maxine and Miss Adeline.
Amen.
What you say, Jack in the bush?
Jack in the bush, him hiding away, him fighting.
Ah, hiding and fighting. Come on, Mr. Music Man. What you looking at? You're jealous. If you did listen to Miss Claudine, she said that how the Queen was always more splendiferous. This is an example of splendiferousness. Next time we have Actor Boy. Stay. Go on, Actor Boy. Actor Boy would recite Richard III without even a piece of education. How does an enslaved boy recite Richard III? Where you going, Actor Boy? You're not finished acting yet. Come on, bring on. Job boy! Where's job boy today? No, listen! Come on, job boy! Okay, you stay there, job boy. Make the people look on you. You see, they would lampoon these. They had these amazing houses while the enslaved people lived in squalor. Look at this over-embellished house and all kinds of stupid plants when they got bush out there. And then they would need to have chimney swing. Hey! Have to have a chimney swing because everybody down there's a little hut of a chimney. people need milk. Come on, milkmaid. Now, this milkmaid has been married 3 times. And she's never what happened to her husbands. But she's dripping in gold. soul. Meet West African tradition in a Jamaican Hastings. Think out of the box. Think, throw the kitchen sink at it. Think, So they asked us to make 4 outfits. How did we do? I'd like to thank Actor Boy, also known as Daisy! You didn't think you'd see a white man, did you? You know in Jamaica we say out of many, one people. One people, out of many, one people. And so we do it. He's actually been sewing up a store. Look at that outfit! The red set girls are alive and but also embellish a lot of stuff. David's got mad with embellishing everything. I'm not even going to tell you. He just saw glitter and thought, yeah, we had to persuade him pigeon patching out as well. And then in the end we had to have a gold pigeon patching. Can I introduce you to the Miss Troublemaker herself, Lana! Beautiful outfit. Have I left anybody? Ah, you see Polly. Polly. Miss Polly. sing, dance, she jump, she advice. She's even sent me praise when I don't want them. But if it works, I'll take them. If you want to pray for me, you go ahead. Isn't that right, miss? Yes. Here we have Miss Pat. Oh, I don't know what to do. I can't sing. Oh, I got arrested. I can't make these bars. Oh, God, nightmare. And look at her. The master. All over the Victoria just happened to pop into the lab. She ain't done nothing. She just came along and now, hey, what you doing? And trying this on. And she's like, oh, you do. And what about this one? What about this one? This is the thing about Ann Tucker is that once she put on the outfit, she don't take it off. Rumor has it that she's been seen on Silchester Road. Take off your hood, take off your sticker, make them see your face. No, leave it up, leave it up. Have I missed anybody? Come forward. Take off your mask. Put on your mask. Now, if you don't know Dara dance, one day at Africa Land, you ain't living. My very long-suffering husband. He can't say either. But you see how they look a little bit like the Borgies? Just a teeny bit.
I want to say something. So, when I went to Kew Beach and had the idea, I said to Claudine, it'd be really good to make some characters, 4 characters, and hold that in your mind, 4 characters, and we will do, then I said, so how many workshops should we do? And she goes, well, we'll just do 4 workshops. So Claudine has organised and ran 10 workshops. And
why are you telling them my business?
And created 14 amazing characters.
Because some are stupid. But y'all, the smart people, because you booked in and you came. And there's at least 20 arse people out there who booked, didn't come and didn't tell us they were coming. And when I find them, we're going to say, we're going to just leave you a little bit now.
Join in.
And all of you know it. All of you know it.
Okay! Hey! Golden boy, go on, golden boy. David, who works in TV and tells me it was Bob Markhouse's. I may not sleep for days. You have been